Hey everybody, welcome back to Caveman Security. My name is Robbie, and today we're going to talk about the owasp top 10. So I'm not going to go into anything in depth, but I just kind of want to give you a brief overview of what is owasp, why is there a top 10, stuff like this. And then I'll give you one good example of one of those top 10s. So if you're ready, let's get started. Alright, so let's get into it. So what is the owasp top 10? I consider these to be the attacks that have been around a very long time, but they're still very vulnerable. And it's true. A lot of people think today people are using AI and all this stuff to find like new exploits, 0 days, all this stuff. Not really. That's why the OWASP Top 10 was created, because there are still old attacks that are being used every day. So I think it's really important to learn about them, because you can still go into a bug bounty program. You can even go into your own website and you can probably perform one of the OWASP Top 10 and you can probably find a vulnerability. So I think the reality is these are still very much alive and well, right? So what is OWASP? So OWASP is the Open World Application Security Project. I'm actually a foundation member, so I've actually been an OWASP member for I think about 2, maybe 3 years now. And you can help with open source initiatives, help develop for them, help make guides, whatever that you need. They're a great resource and a great group of people. Okay, so remember, OWASP is a free security knowledge base for developers and hackers. So remember, if you're using them, your attackers are too. So just keep an eye out. All right, so why was a top 10 made? So obviously, we need to kind of look at what are the most vulnerable attacks, what are the most common attacks. So OWASP decided to do this, right? Because if you sit there and go, well, we're seeing the same attacks over and over and over and over, we need to address it. We need to kind of list these out and say, hey, what's happening? Why is this so common? So that's why they were originally made. Okay? Also, APIs become a massive target. We sit there and we see them in mobile apps, cloud services, integrations, even more exposed APIs. There's a lot of things that are really vulnerable with APIs that people don't realize. So creating a top 10 was really, really important. So now that we can kind of keep an eye out and see what's really happening behind the scenes. Okay, so what is the top 10? I'm not going to go too deep into this because I think it's just a lot of information. So each video after this, I'm going to go through one top 10 and just kind of show you the different things that you could see. Okay, so first we have broken access control, cryptographic failures, injection and secure design, security misconfiguration, vulnerable and outdated components, identification and authentication failures, software and data integrity failures, security logging and monitoring failures, server-side request forgery. Okay, so these are the things that you're going to see a lot, and it's just going to be very, very important to learn about them and how to use them very well. Okay? All right, so let's talk about APIs a little bit. They're really good at trusting people too much. So a lot of times when you're creating APIs, a lot of people don't think about the security aspect. They just say, okay, I need to build something that's convenient and accessible, and that's it. So here, we can assume that if users send a request, user must be allowed. So this makes sense, right? Because if you don't have any security to it, you don't have any secure endpoints, then yeah, you're going to allow many users to access this information. And it's true. I've been on it with my own websites, bug bounty programs. I can ping an API and it'll give me a lot of information. And that's very scary to think about. So kind of be mindful about that when you're looking at this. Okay. API misconfiguration is a problem. Kind of just talked about it. A lot of people, they develop the API, but they don't develop the security for it. They don't develop the correct functionality for it. So a lot of times people use and abuse the functionality once they know about it. I call it like the open door cave problem. You just have like your man cave or cave, and it's just open. Anyone can come in and out, steal your stuff, no big deal. A lot of times we have debug mode enabled. We really should not have debug mode enabled, but people do because it's convenient. But the reality is, if an attacker knows about it, they're going to mess around with it. Again, think about default passwords, default API keys. Many times people reuse these and they don't really change them, and we have problems, right? And then of course unprotected endpoints. So again, are you running like cookies? Are you running like JWT tokens to protect these endpoints? 9 times out of 10, you're probably not. And so you have a big misconfiguration problem. So we need to solve that. Okay, so why attackers love APIs? So APIs are direct paths. So that means they can access information easily without much effort. There's no front-end protection, so you don't have to worry about it. They have direct access to data. This is the scary part. You can kind of look at an API and you can just blink and you have data galore. So this can be very dangerous for most people, especially when we look at just like regular APIs. So let's say you're logged into a website and you think, well, I shouldn't be able to just see anyone else's data. But 9 times out of 10, if you really look at the API, you probably could. And it's a little scary. And then finally, I think we talked about it last episode, business logic is exposed. So be careful of that. If you're kind of looking and saying what this API is doing and how it affects your business, and the attacker knows it, then they can disrupt the business. Now we have a disruption of service, right? Like DOS, right? So we don't want to do that. So be very mindful when you're developing these APIs or learning how to play with these APIs. Okay, so some common mistakes that developers make, and I think this is really important. Trusting client input. I think this is really important. I think many people did say, oh, it's okay. We don't need to worry about input sanitization. It's no big deal. Bad answer. Exposing internal IDS. Really, it's not a great thing either. You really should be more mindful about that. A lot of times developers don't add rate limiting. They just sit there and say, oh yeah, you can do this as many times as you want. Well, that's also very dangerous because that can turn into a DDoS attack. It can turn into some aggression. It can knock it off the server. So we just need to be very careful. Poor authentication. Do you have JWT tokens enabled? Do you have cookies enabled? What do you have going on that's protecting these systems? A lot of times you guys don't have them. And of course, no authorization checks. So if you're not running like a bearer token when you're running an API, and you can just run an API without a token, that just tells me that you don't really respect your company, you don't really respect the security. So that's kind of a problem. So I think anytime anyone is using an API, there has to be a bearer token in mind. Okay? All right, so here's some key takeaways. Remember, owasp top 10, still ancient mistakes that still exist, and people still use them today. All right, so what I'm going to do now is I'm going to show you a kind of example of kind of owasp 10 or kind of just some risky things that you can see with APIs. So let's go ahead and take a look and see what it's all about. We'll see you in the next section. All right, so we're back at the crappy API web application. I like this one a lot just because it's really useful because it's really API heavy, but also it's more realistic. So you can really look at this and see a lot of things that you normally wouldn't on some pre-made applications that are designed for vulnerability. This really gives you kind of more of a real world perspective. So what I want to show you in this one is something called like excessive data exposure. So that's an owasp top 10 for API section. And what that is it allows people to see too much information that they really shouldn't see. So what we're going to do is we're going to travel over to the community section, and we see a few things here. We see our title, name, post date, everything. So not too bad. So we see 3 of these here. Pretty good, right? So what we want to do, actually, let's go ahead and look at our tool. We're going to use Kaido for this. We're going to look at this API function. So let's kind of look down here. So where are we at? So we have our community API v2 community post and recent. Okay, so here this is going to tell us some information. It should tell us, kind of something like a post ID, maybe the username, something like this. Should be pretty clear, pretty nice, right? But let's take a look. So if we look down, we can see actually quite a bit of information. So we can actually see our posts, the ID number, the title, content. But then we see a couple things. We see nickname, email. This is not really good at all. It's not good to have an email. We see vehicle ID. That's also not great. We could also use this and manipulate this amount. We also can see profile pic URL. So we can see that this is for everybody. So now I can see 3 people's information, 3 people's email, and this is horrible. So this is a great example of excessive data exposure. And this is something that you don't want to see when you're looking at APIs. So if you can see like everyone's information like in a community setting and like a group area, then this is a big problem. Okay, so guys, this is just a very simple example I wanted to show you because I think it is really, really important. And I'm going to show you guys more of these in the future. Okay, so guys, if you like this video, we'll see you in the next episode. Okay, thank you and take care.